says to tell you hello. She remembers we were here 6 years ago. My wife and kids were not with me, but my sister came with me, and she told me today, she's like, "Oh my goodness, you're going to Ohio. I love that little church over there in Findlay. Such a cute group." And yeah, my sister loves it over here, so she couldn't be here today, but yeah, she sent her love too. So thank you. One of the things that I've learned, by the way, I'm Jared. You can call me Jay. Everybody calls me Jay. It's been 6 years since we were in America last time, and a lot has changed. We didn't mean to be gone for 6 years, but that was the whole thing, right? Isn't it nice that whole thing is kind of nice? People feel like things are getting back to normal a little bit in some ways, but a lot of things have changed, and we just are mindful of that. One of the things that I appreciate, especially about this church here, and this is important whether it's being a pastor of a church, raising kids, being a teacher, in business, whatever it is, when you have a goal, maybe you have a vision that you're trying to make a reality, and you have, like, life has all these ups and downs, right? And there's curveballs and things that come out of left field, like you have no idea. I remember at the beginning of 2020, we were planning to be coming in the fall to America. And I remember thinking in 2020, oh yeah, I need to get in contact with the church in Ohio, because that's one of the places we're going to visit later this year in 2020. And then, like, everything just, you remember. Yeah, anyway. And that's life, right? And what I've learned through all of that is whenever you're trying to reach a goal, whenever you're trying to do anything, whether it's like what we're doing in the mission field in Thailand, you just need one thing. If you're wanting to achieve a goal or actually make meaningful, lasting change, and that's consistency. Just consistency. Our kids need consistency. Our families need consistency, right? Just that consistent, you know what you're going to get. It creates that sense of stability that I know our kids need. It helps to provide boundaries, relational boundaries, other kind of boundaries, right, that keep people safe and happy and healthy. And so one of the things I just want to say, first of all, thank you, is Findlay Seventh Adventist Church has been, like, consistently always there just along the way. There's been ups and downs. People have come and gone from our life, from our ministry, and Findlay Church is just always there, consistent, right? And it's that consistent day in, day out, month in, month out, year in, year out that actually makes things like what we're doing possible. So thank you, Findlay Church, for that. Actually, thank you very much for you guys. Like, yeah, I mean, that's you. That's important. One of the things that we learned, too, during these last few years, especially during the pandemic time, was a lot of these kids that we were working with, because we've literally worked in the last 7, 8 years, thousands of kids, hundreds of families, right? And one of the things we realized right away is we can't do it all alone. Like, we just can't do everything by ourselves. During the pandemic, when schools were shut down over there, my wife and I and a couple of our local ministry partners, we were the only people doing anything. So we were literally out every day, visiting homes, helping these kids, helping them with homework, trying to help them study online. Domestic abuse went up because the kids weren't in school, they were at home. Suicide went up. Everything was just, it was a mess, right? Kids weren't learning how to read, so we were teaching kids how to read. If you believe it, we were teaching kids how to read Thai because they couldn't go to school. So we were like teaching them how to read their own language, right? They couldn't go to school. And we were just that consistent presence there through all of that for about 2 or 3 years. When a lot of these kids, they couldn't see their parents might have been quarantined somewhere else, were living in another country, another part of Thailand, right? And so we were just able to be there for them consistently through that. But one of the things we realized after that is the great need, like where we live, our little corner, it's almost 2 million people, right? 99.9% Buddhist, whatever it is, right? Very little Christian presence or anything else, right? And for the most part, the people we serve, they're mainly just afraid of ghosts and spirits, which are real things. They are. For them, it's like, yeah. Ghosts and spirits, yeah, what? Okay. And they're afraid of it. right? For a lot of these kids that we work with, just being there when they're afraid and scared, teaching them how to pray. We've had some of these kids, they'll read a Bible story, and then there's one of the girls who'd been coming, for several years, and she was walking her friend home from school, from our learning center that we have after school one day, and they'd gotten their homework help, and she was walking her friend home, and it was getting dark, and her friend saw a ghost behind a tree, because that's one of the places they like to hang out, behind trees, and then jump out at you on the road. And the little girl was afraid, and the other girl said, "Oh, don't worry." She was like, "We remember, on Sabbath, remember at the learning center, we heard this story, we could pray, and then we don't have to be afraid." So she just prayed with her friend on the side of the road. I was walking behind. I didn't say anything. I didn't do anything. I just watched the whole thing, right? And the little girl prayed with her friend, and then she's like, "Okay, are you still afraid?" No, but can you just hold my hand? Okay, so little lesson there. Praying for people is not enough. Okay, sometimes you need somebody to hold your hand. Okay, prayer and without hand holding, it doesn't quite do the same thing. There's like a connection in it, right? Okay, so she held her little friend, her friend's hand, and walked her home. And her friend wasn't scared anymore. You do it with hugs. You do. Pastor Stephen knows that. He does it with hugs. Yes. And that's a big thing. A lot of these kids, they just need a hug. They just need to know that somebody cares about them. Because the people that we're working with, and more you'll find that people just need to know that Jesus is a real person who cares about their lives. That he's real. And that they matter. And that, one of the things we taught the kids when we were going through, some of these kids are struggling with their educational development and emotional development. So we were teaching them, actually trying to help them through some issues. We were teaching them sign language, American Sign Language. One of the things we talk with these kids is just teaching them, I see you, right? I see you. And that became a thing working with some of these kids who are struggling with suicide, some of the kids and teenagers. When they're going through stuff, hey. And some of the kids who are hard time finding their voice, maybe they suffered abuse, they were dealing with suicide, bullying, whatever it was. They could be in a classroom, you could see them struggling, and just, it means a lot just for a kid to know, I see you, you matter, your life matters. But the reality that we saw with this, working through that, especially during the pandemic time, was we were having a big impact in a small area. And we're like, oh my goodness, there are so many more villages, so many more kids, so many more families that need this kind of help. There's no way we're going to be able to do this by ourselves. How can we get to all these other villages? So there's 1.9 million people in our province. It's 2,470 some villages, right? And in the last 9 years, we've established a really strong group in one village. And you're like, oh no, this is going to take forever. So what do we do? And what we've actually been working strategically through is we need more leaders. So we need to find more people and train more people. So what we'd like to ask your church to do is be praying, and Justice and Mark passed out kind of like a little outline for our most recent newsletter that we sent out, talking about what we're trying to do. The main thing that we're asking for is to be praying with us. We are trying to identify 25 leaders, one leader for each of the districts in our province. Ideally, it would be like a husband and wife, or maybe grandma and grandpa, they would be the leaders to start spiritual family groups in their district. And then we're going to be stepping back and trying to support and train leaders. And one of the things that really struck home for me a few years ago, and this is an amazing thing where you can learn lessons and who can teach you things. A few years ago, I was planting rice. So where we work, there's all rice fields around our learning center in our school, right? And I got invited by some of our neighbors to plant rice, with them, help them plant rice. So the one grandma had taught me, and it's a whole thing, you have to manage the water level so it's at the right depth, and you have to plow the field ahead of time, so I worked with that. And then I was doing the scatter planting, but what I was doing was where you plant young seedling rice plants, right? About this tall. You have a bundle, and you have to get it in your hand. You have a rice seedling, right, in your hand, and then you stick your thumb down in the mud, right? But there's a certain depth. You don't want it too deep, and you don't want it too shallow, right? Okay, if it's too deep, the water, it'll rot the seedling. If it's too shallow, it won't root and it'll just get washed away, right? So the one grandma had been teaching me, right? She'd been planting rice since she was a little kid. So she's teaching me, and so they gave me like my little plot, which was like, to start planting, right? So I was practicing, so I'm over there, with my bundle, and, I'm like going, she said, you got to space it out, because there's got to be just the right amount of space between the seedlings, right? So I'm going, and I'm working, and, it's hot, I'll stop and drink water, and I took my shirt off, and, oh my goodness, wow, and I get my thing planted, right? And there's this grandma and another auntie, and the grandma comes over, and the auntie comes over, and they're looking, and they're like, wow, this looks so beautiful. Like, your area that you planted looks amazing. They're like, look how evenly spaced the rice is, how perfectly, oh my goodness. And she was like, all your rice, like, seedlings are like exactly the same depth. She's like, this looks perfect. Perfect. She goes, great job. And I was like kind of feeling a little condescended to, right? Like, wait, what? And she's like, she kind of does one of these, like, right? Grandma has planted an entire field. And I had just planted this little thing. Okay? She's like, your rice paddy, your little rice paddy here looks beautiful. But if your family was actually depending on you to plant rice, they would starve to death. She's like, it looks great. It looks perfect. You did it right. But your family would starve. And I'm looking at her, and hers, she's planted a lot. It doesn't look quite as nice as what mine looked. I mean, mine clearly looked like picture perfect, right? I had done everything just like I was instructed. I had done it perfectly, correct, everything. Okay? But if that was my family depended on it, they would starve. Okay? There wouldn't be enough rice for them. Okay? I would never be able to plant enough rice to feed my family at the rate I was going. Okay? So that's one lesson. I need help. We need to work with some more people. But the other thing I learned from this is this. This is a hard lesson that I've had to learn, okay? Growing up in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. You can be doing everything right and perfect, and it can look great, and people are starving. Because it's not, we need to stop focusing on what's right and focus on what works. So that people get fed. Okay? Because you can be doing it all right, and it can look perfect, and people are starving. Okay? Now, I don't know what that means for Findlay, in your family, in your job, in your whatever your rice field looks like, okay? Alright? But it's a good question to ask, like, hey, am I focusing on just doing it right, or being perfect, or are people actually getting their needs met? Okay? And so what I learned also from that is I'm watching the community plant. I'm like, you know what? I need more help because we can't do all of this by ourselves. We can only have this much impact, right? Okay? So we're back for a couple months. We'll be going back to Thailand next month on October 12th. You have the handouts. I just want to thank you again for all your continued support, that consistency. Because I do believe, like, with that consistency, like, it does make a difference over time. It really does. Okay? And we're going to be going back kind of with a renewed sense, a new vision, and we're going to be wrestling with how that looks, how we identify these leaders. We have a couple of people we're already training right now to do some of the things we're doing and start these spiritual family groups. By the way, these 2,500 spiritual family groups, one spiritual family group would be like 10 to 15 people. Okay? So we're not talking about big, we're talking about there's a family group everywhere where if anybody needed help, actually, I think you were saying, in Sabbath school this morning, I'm sorry, I forget your name again. Ruth. Ruth was saying, like, this is my what? Yeah. Okay. Ruth, I'm just going to say probably, this is my guess. Ruth doesn't come here because it's the right thing to do. She comes here because she needs this place. This is her family.
This is where she finds love. This is where you find support.
Thank you. That's my point. You go where the love and support is, right? You go where the love and support is. Yeah, That's what we're trying to do. So what Ruth found here, we want all those people over there to find that. Or at least it's close by. They can walk to it. It's not far away. So if somebody's like, I don't have any family, I need something, hey, there's a family right there. Yeah. Okay. We'll be sticking around for the potluck and start taking some time. Sorry. If you'd like to ask us more questions, love to talk to you guys. You have some letters that we passed out. If you'd like to know more, happy to talk to you more if you have any questions. So thank you guys. Thank you for all your love and support of my family too. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.